Brooke Carter had everything planned, every detail, every moment, every feeling she thought she could control. She arrived at that luxurious Vermont resort on Christmas Eve with one simple mission: to finally experience the perfect holiday she'd been chasing for years. No disappointments, no heartbreak, just peace, snow, and solitude. But the moment her pink suitcase hit the icy floor of the lobby, and her eyes met those of a stranger with a disarming smile, everything she thought she knew about control began to slip through her fingers. Logan Hayes wasn't part of her plan. He wasn't on any list, and yet in just 3 days, trapped together by a snowstorm, he would become the only thing that mattered. What Brooke didn't know was that sometimes the perfect Christmas doesn't come from planning, it comes from chaos. If this story speaks to you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? Your support is what keeps this channel alive and allows us to keep sharing stories that touch the heart. Brooke Carter had always believed that chaos could be tamed, that color-coded lists, organized spreadsheets, and a good dose of determination were enough to keep life on track. At 32, she'd built a solid career as a lifestyle journalist in New York, writing about self-care routines, cozy recipes, and tips for creating the perfect life. Her articles had thousands of views. Her readers adored her. But there was a cruel irony in it all. While she taught others how to live well, Brooke felt like her own life was crumbling from the inside out. Last Christmas had been a disaster. Ryan, her boyfriend of 3 years, broke up with her on Christmas Eve by text message while she was wrapping his gifts. "I'm not ready for this," was all he said. No explanations, no courage to look her in the eyes. Brooke spent that night alone, staring at the perfectly decorated tree, feeling the suffocating weight of silence. Since then, she'd sworn to herself that this year would be different. There would be no room for disappointments, no one to disappoint. Just her, the snow, and a perfectly planned Christmas. That's how Brooke found herself driving down the winding Vermont road toward Pine Ridge Resort, a luxurious mountain retreat. The place looked straight out of a postcard, wooden cabins covered in snow, golden lights twinkling in the windows, the scent of pine and cinnamon floating in the air. She'd reserved a private cabin with a fireplace, hot tub, and stunning mountain views. 5 days of absolute peace. No family interrogating her about her love life. No well-meaning friends trying to set her up with someone. Just her books, her Christmas activity list, and the comforting silence of chosen solitude. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Brooke parked the car and grabbed her pink suitcase, a vibrant choice that contrasted with the emotional grey she'd been carrying for months. She adjusted her scarf, took a deep breath of the freezing air, and walked toward the main lobby. The place was even more beautiful than in the photos. A high ceiling with wooden beams, a giant Christmas tree decorated with gold and red ornaments, and a crackling fireplace radiating warmth. There were families laughing, couples holding hands, children running between the armchairs. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed exactly what she needed, until it wasn't. Brooke took a confident step toward the reception desk. But the polished lobby floor, still wet from snow tracked in by other guests, betrayed her low-heeled shoes. She slipped. Her arms flailed in the air, trying to regain balance, but it was useless. The pink suitcase escaped from her hand, slid across the floor like an out-of-control sled, and crashed into a nearby armchair with a loud bang. Brooke fell to her knees with a dull thud that echoed through the lobby. The silence was immediate. All conversations stopped. All eyes turned to her. Her face burned with embarrassment. She felt the weight of dozens of pairs of eyes on her, some concerned, others clearly holding back laughter. Brooke closed her eyes for a moment, wishing the earth would open up and swallow her. So much for the perfect Christmas. "Are you okay?" The voice was deep, warm, with a touch of barely disguised amusement. Brooke opened her eyes and found herself looking at a pair of brown leather boots. Slowly, her gaze traveled up. Worn jeans, black leather jacket, broad shoulders, and finally a face that made her heart skip an unexpected beat. The man before her was absurdly attractive. Dark brown hair, slightly tousled, light blue eyes that seemed to shine with a mix of concern and humor, stubble that gave him a relaxed, almost rebellious air. And that smile, a slow, confident smile that suggested he knew exactly the effect he had. "I'm fine," Brooke muttered, trying to stand with what little dignity she had left. But her knees were shaky, and she wobbled slightly. The stranger extended his hand. "Let me help." Brooke hesitated, but accepted. His hand was warm, firm, and when he pulled her up, she felt an electric current run up her arm. She pulled away quickly, adjusting her scarf and trying to regain her composure. "Thank you," she said, avoiding his gaze. "You're welcome." He bent down and picked up the pink suitcase, lifting it with ease. "This yours?" "Yes." Brooke reached out to take it, but he held the handle firmly. "I'll carry it for you. Looks like the floor is trying to sabotage your Christmas." She couldn't help a reluctant smile. "Looks that way." They walked side by side to the reception desk, and Brooke tried to ignore the strange feeling of being so close to him. There was something about the way he moved, relaxed, confident, like someone who didn't worry about what others thought. He was the complete opposite of her. "Logan Hayes," he said, extending his hand again when they reached the counter. "Brooke Carter." She shook his hand, this time prepared for the spark she felt. "Pleasure, Brooke Carter." He said her name as if he were savoring each syllable, and she felt her cheeks flush again. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, looked at the two of them with barely disguised interest. "Welcome to Pine Ridge Resort. Are you checking in?" "Yes," Brooke and Logan said at the same time. They looked at each other, and Logan laughed. "Looks like we have something in common," he said. The receptionist typed something into the computer, frowned, typed again, and then made a worried expression. "Oh no, this can't be right." Brooke felt a knot in her stomach. "What's wrong?" "Well," the receptionist cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable. "It appears there was an error in the reservation system. You've both been assigned to the same cabin." Silence. Brooke blinked, certain she'd heard wrong. "What do you mean, the same cabin?" "It must be a mistake," Logan said, though his tone was more amused than worried. "I reserved cabin 7. "I also reserved cabin 7, Brooke said, her voice rising an octave. 3 months ago." The receptionist checked again, biting her lip. "Both reservations are confirmed here, but for some reason the system registered you both in the same cabin. And with the snowstorm predicted for tonight, all the other cabins are occupied. We have no more availability." Brooke felt panic rising in her chest. But that's impossible. I need my own cabin. I planned everything. "Hey, easy," Logan said, his voice gentle. He turned to the receptionist. "Isn't there anywhere else? A room in the main building?" The woman shook her head with genuine regret. "We're completely booked. The storm is making many people arrive early. It's Christmas Eve. I'm so sorry." Brooke took a deep breath, trying to process the situation. This couldn't be happening, not now. Not when she'd finally planned something perfect. Logan turned to her, hands in his pockets, with that irritatingly calm smile. "Look, I know this isn't ideal, but cabin 7 is huge. It has 2 bathrooms, a large living room, and I'm sure we can share the space. No problem." Brooke stared at him, incredulous. "You're suggesting we share a cabin? We're complete strangers." "Technically, not anymore. You already know my name. And I saved you from an epic fall." He winked, and Brooke didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "I can't just share a cabin with a man I just met." "Why not?" Logan tilted his head, genuinely curious. "I promise I don't snore." "Much." The receptionist intervened, desperate to resolve the situation. Miss Carter, Mr. Hayes, I truly apologize. We can offer a significant discount on your stays and guarantee you'll have maximum privacy. The cabin has a king-size bed in the master suite and a comfortable sofa bed in the living room. And with the storm coming, I really wouldn't recommend you get back on the road now." Brooke looked out the window. The sky was already darkening, and the first snowflakes were beginning to fall more heavily. She thought about driving back to New York, spending Christmas alone in her empty apartment, giving up on everything. But something inside her, maybe pride, maybe pure stubbornness, refused to give in. "Fine," she said, her voice tense. "We'll share the cabin." Logan smiled, and she swore she saw a gleam of victory in those blue eyes. "Great! This is going to be interesting." As the receptionist prepared the keys, Brooke looked at Logan Hayes, the man who, unknowingly, had just become part of her perfectly planned Christmas. And for the first time in months, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, chaos wasn't so bad after all. But she didn't know yet, couldn't imagine yet, that this reservation error, this stranger with a disarming smile and eyes that seemed to see right through her, would change everything. That in 3 days her life would be turned upside down, and that the perfect Christmas she'd been seeking was about to become completely imperfect and absolutely unforgettable. The walk to Cabin 7 was silent, punctuated only by the crunch of snow under their boots and the wind beginning to howl through the pines. Brooke walked ahead, shoulders tense, the pink suitcase dragging behind her like a stubborn symbol of her determination. Logan followed close behind, whistling softly to a Christmas melody she couldn't identify. The sound should have been irritating, but for some reason it was almost comforting. When they finally reached the cabin, Brooke stopped and looked at the structure before her. It was beautiful, she had to admit. Dark wood, large windows with white curtains, a snow-covered porch with 2 rocking chairs, and a stack of firewood beside the door. Yellow lights glowed from inside, creating a welcoming warmth that contrasted with the biting cold outside. It was exactly as she'd imagined, except for the small, huge difference that she wouldn't be alone. Logan stepped past her and unlocked the door, pushing it open with his shoulder. "After you, cabin mate." Brooke entered, and the warmth immediately enveloped her. The interior was even more charming than the photos. Polished wooden floors, a stone fireplace already crackling softly, comfortable leather sofas covered with wool blankets, and a small but perfectly decorated Christmas tree in one corner. The open kitchen was modern and equipped, with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. There was a scent of cinnamon and pine in the air, probably from some diffuser hidden somewhere. And then she saw it, through a half-open door at the back, the master suite, and in the center of it, impossible to ignore, was the bed. A huge king-size bed, covered with a fluffy white comforter and piles of pillows. One single bed. "Ah," Logan said behind her, clearly seeing the same thing. "Well, it's a big bed." Brooke turned to him, arms crossed. "You're sleeping on the couch." He raised his eyebrows, that irritating smile playing on his lips. "Seriously? Completely? And why should I sleep on the couch?" "Because I reserved this cabin first." "Actually," Logan said, pulling out his phone and scrolling through the screen, "I made my reservation 4 months ago, so technically, I got here first." Brooke opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have an answer for that, and she hated not having an answer. Logan laughed, a deep sound that seemed to reverberate in his chest. "Relax, Brooke. I was joking. You can have the bed. I'll take the couch." "Thank you," she said, though the word came out stiffer than she'd intended. "But," he added, dropping his black backpack on the floor, "let's establish some ground rules. If we're going to share this space, we need clear boundaries. Agreed?" Brooke blinked, surprised. She'd been planning to suggest exactly the same thing. "Agreed. Great." Logan went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a bottle of water. So, what are your rules? Brooke pulled out her notebook from her purse, a pink notebook with colored tabs and a purple gel pen attached to the side. Logan looked at the notebook and then at her, with an amused expression she chose to ignore. First, she began, opening the notebook to a blank page. Bathroom schedule. I need to use the bathroom between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning. No exceptions. You take an hour in the bathroom? I have my routine. Right. He took a sip of water, clearly entertained. Continue. Second, the kitchen. We can share, but we need to label our food. I don't want any mix-ups. Seriously? We're going to label food? Do you have a problem with organization? No, it's cute. He smiled, and Brooke felt her cheeks heat up. Third, she said, determined to ignore the comment, privacy. We need to announce before entering the bedroom or bathroom if the door is closed. No surprises. Agreed completely. I also like my privacy. Logan put the water bottle on the counter and approached, leaning against it with his arms crossed. He was too close. Brooke could smell him, something woody, mixed with leather, and a hint of mint. It was unsettling. Fourth, she continued, trying to keep her voice steady. Quiet time after 10 at night. I need to sleep well. 10 at night? Logan laughed. We're on vacation. It's Christmas. Those are my rules. All right. 10 at night. Complete silence. He made an exaggerated grimace, as if he were suffering, and Brooke had to fight the urge to smile. And lastly, she said, pausing for emphasis, no. Invasions of personal space. We maintain a respectful distance. Logan studied her for a long moment, those penetrating blue eyes seeming to see something she wasn't willing to show. Respectful distance, he repeated. Defined. Great. Brooke closed the notebook with a satisfying snap. Now that we have that settled, I'm going to unpack my things. She grabbed her suitcase and went to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Only then did she allow her shoulders to relax. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was ridiculous. She was an adult woman, a professional, perfectly capable of sharing a space with a stranger for a few days. There was no reason to be so nervous. But as she unpacked her neatly folded clothes, organized her personal care products in the bathroom in alphabetical order, and hung her Christmas dress in the closet, she couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way he'd laughed, about the warmth of his hand when he helped her up, about those eyes that seemed to see through all her carefully constructed defenses. When she finally came out of the bedroom, Logan was in the kitchen, preparing something on the stove. The sound of a sizzling pan and the aroma of garlic and butter filled the air. "What are you doing?" Brooke asked, approaching. "Dinner. Have you eaten?" "I haven't." "Great. I'm making pasta with garlic and olive oil. Nothing fancy, but it'll warm you up." He looked at her over his shoulder. "Unless you want to label your ingredients first." Brooke rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. "Very funny." "I try." He turned completely, the wooden spatula in his hand. "Look, I know this is weird. Trust me, this wasn't how I planned to spend my Christmas either. But since we're stuck here together because of this storm, we might as well try to make this tolerable." Brooke watched him, really watched him, for the first time since they'd arrived. There was something genuine in his face. No trace of sarcasm or forced amusement, just sincerity. "Tolerable," she repeated. "I think I can agree to that." "Perfect." He turned back to the stove. "By the way, I'm not a terrible cook, so you can lower your guard. Just a little." They had dinner at the small dining table near the window, watching the snow fall more heavily outside. The storm the receptionist had mentioned was clearly intensifying. The wind shook the pine branches, and visibility was already diminishing. Brooke felt a shiver, but she didn't know if it was from the cold or the sudden awareness that she and Logan were completely isolated there. "So," Logan said, twirling pasta on his fork, "lifestyle journalist. Does that mean you write about what exactly? A bit of everything. Recipes, decoration, self-care, organization, things that help people live better. Live better, he echoed, thoughtful. And you? Do you live well? The question caught her off guard. Yes, I think so. You think? He tilted his head, that curious look again. Doesn't sound very convincing. Brooke put her fork on her plate, uncomfortable. And you? What do you do? I'm a pilot. Commercial pilot? Not exactly. I do medical rescue flights, organ transport, critical patients, that kind of thing. Brooke blinked, surprised. Wow, that's incredible. Logan shrugged, but she could see a gleam of pride in his eyes. It's a job. Someone has to do it. But it's more than a job. You save lives. Sometimes. He took a sip of water. Other times, I arrive too late. It's part of the job. There was something in his voice, a subtle sadness he tried to hide, but Brooke caught it. She wanted to ask more, but something stopped her. Maybe it was her own rule about distance. After dinner, they washed the dishes together, Brooke washing, Logan drying. It was a strangely domestic routine, almost intimate, and Brooke found herself hyper-aware of every movement he made beside her. The way his hands held the plates, the sound of his breathing, the proximity of their bodies in the small kitchen space. When they finished, Logan went to his backpack and pulled out a laptop. I'm going to work a bit. Need to review some reports. Okay. I'm going to read. Brooke grabbed her book and settled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. But the words blurred on the page. She couldn't concentrate. All her attention was focused on Logan, sitting at the table, fingers sliding across the keyboard, forehead furrowed in concentration. The night wore on. The storm outside intensified, transforming into a true spectacle of wind and snow. Branches scraped against the windows. The fireplace crackled, and between them a comfortable silence settled, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. When the clock struck 10, Logan closed his laptop and stretched. Time for quiet, he said with a smile. Your rules. My rules, Brooke agreed, closing the book she hadn't read. She went to the bedroom, changed clothes, and lay down on the huge bed. From inside, she could hear Logan moving around the living room, arranging pillows and blankets on the couch. She heard the sound of his boots being removed, the zipper of his jacket, and then, finally, silence. But Brooke couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how her life had changed in just a few hours, how she'd gone from seeking solitude to sharing a cabin with a complete stranger. A stranger who made her laugh, who cooked for her, who looked at her as if he really saw her. And for the first time in a long time, Brooke wondered if maybe her lists and rules and control weren't the answer. If maybe, just maybe, letting chaos in wasn't so scary after all. Outside, the storm raged. And inside Cabin 7, two strangers, not yet lovers, not yet friends, but something undefined and full of possibilities, slept under the same roof, separated only by a door and all the defenses that hadn't yet fallen. But they would fall. Oh, how they would fall. Morning arrived with a white, blinding light. Brooke woke up disoriented, taking a few seconds to remember where she was. The room was silent, except for the muffled sound of wind outside. She looked at the clock on the nightstand. 6:15 in the morning. Perfect. She still had time for her morning routine before the schedule she'd established. She wrapped herself in the soft robe she'd brought and opened the bedroom door carefully, peeking into the living room. Logan was still asleep on the couch, turned on his side, one arm hanging out from under the blankets. He looked different when sleeping, younger, more vulnerable. His tousled hair fell over his forehead, and there was an expression of peace on his face that contrasted with the confident smile he wore when awake. And Brooke felt her heart expand with so much love that it almost hurt. Wait, love? She quickly looked away, feeling strangely invasive, and went to the bathroom. Her morning routine was sacred, always had been. 15 minutes of skincare, cleanser, toner, serum, moisturizer, sunscreen, 10 minutes for hair, 5 to choose an outfit. It was predictable, yes, but it was also comforting. In the chaotic world she lived in, where everything could crumble in seconds, her routine was the only thing she could completely control. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, dressed in black leggings and a wine-colored wool sweater, Logan was already awake. He was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing a grey t-shirt and sweatpants, stirring something in a pan. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "Coffee? Please." Brooke approached, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee making her stomach rumble. "Are you always this productive in the morning?" "I wake up early. Comes with the job." He poured 2 cups and handed her one. "I also made scrambled eggs. Do you eat eggs?" "I do." She took a sip of the coffee, strong exactly how she liked it. "Thank you." They had coffee in silence for a few minutes, and Brooke found herself watching him again. There was something fascinating about the way Logan moved, economical, efficient, no wasted movements, like someone accustomed to working under pressure. "So," Logan said, breaking the silence, "what's the plan for today?" "Plan?" "Yes. You seem like the type of person who has a plan for everything." Brooke frowned, defensive. "And that's bad?" "I didn't say it was bad. Just predictable." "Predictable?" She put her cup on the counter harder than she'd intended. "You've known me for less than 24 hours. You can't judge me like that." Logan raised his hands, conciliatory. "Hey, sorry. I didn't mean to offend. It's just, you have that pink notebook with the colored tabs, the matching suitcase, everything organized by color. It's kind of obvious. And what's wrong with being organized?" "Nothing wrong." He leaned against the counter, those blue eyes fixed on her. "But have you ever considered that sometimes the best things happen when you don't plan?" Brooke crossed her arms. "No, because when you don't plan, things go wrong." "Or," Logan said, a slow smile forming, "they go right in a way you never imagined." She stared at him, speechless for a moment. There was something challenging in his gaze, but also something kind, as if he were inviting her to see the world differently, not forcing her. "I like to plan," Brooke finally said, her voice softer. "It makes me feel safe." Logan's expression changed. The amusement disappeared, replaced by something deeper. "Safe from what?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it. How to explain that she planned everything because she hadn't planned for Ryan to leave her? That she hadn't planned for her heart to break? That she hadn't planned to spend an entire year feeling lost? "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Forget it." Logan watched her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, no pressure." They finished their coffee in slightly tense silence, and Brooke felt bad for reacting that way. He was just trying to be friendly. And maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe she was too predictable. After coffee, Brooke decided to go for a walk. The storm had diminished overnight, though the sky was still grey and heavy. She put on her heavy coat, wrapped her scarf around her neck and went out, leaving Logan watching something on his laptop. The air outside was biting, burning her lungs with each breath. The snow covered everything in a thick, pristine layer, muffling sounds. It was beautiful, silent, exactly what she needed. Brooke walked along the trail that circled the cabins, her feet sinking into the snow with each step. There were other people around, a couple throwing snowballs, a family building a snowman, children laughing and shouting. Everyone seemed so happy, so carefree. She stopped near a large pine tree and leaned against the trunk, watching the landscape. The mountains in the distance, covered in white, the cloudy sky promising more snow, and there she was, alone again, watching life happen around her while keeping her distance. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Brooke startled, turning quickly. Logan was there, hands in his jacket pockets, a black wool beanie on his head. "Did you follow me?" "Not exactly, I just also wanted to walk." He approached, standing beside her. "May I?" She nodded, and they stood there together side by side in silence. "Sorry about earlier," Logan finally said, "about the predictable comment. That was insensitive." "No, you were right." Brooke sighed, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "I am predictable. I even planned how I wanted to feel this Christmas. It's pathetic." "It's not pathetic." Logan's voice was firm. "It's human. We all want to control something, especially when we feel like we've lost control of everything else." She looked at him, surprised by the insight. "How do you know I lost control?" He shrugged. "Just a guess. Nobody comes alone to a luxury resort at Christmas unless they're running from something. Or someone." Brooke felt a lump in her throat. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. And you are?" Logan turned to face her completely. "Yes, I am." There was something in the way he said it, so simple, so direct, that made Brooke's heart race. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. Those blue eyes held her in place. "I'm also running," Logan said, breaking the moment. "If that helps." "From what?" "From everything. From work. From expectations. From spending another Christmas, pretending everything's okay when it's not." He kicked the snow with his boot. "My family is complicated. And after losing a patient last month, a 7-year-old girl I couldn't save in time, I just needed to disappear for a few days." Brooke's chest tightened. "Logan, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault." He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "But that's why I understand. I understand wanting to control things. Because when you can't save someone, when you can't prevent the worst from happening, you want to at least control what you can, even if it's just a perfect Christmas." Brooke felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked quickly, trying to hold them back. "I was abandoned," she said suddenly, the words coming out before she could stop them. "Last Christmas, my boyfriend broke up with me by text, after 3 years together, and I didn't see it coming. I thought everything was fine. I thought we were fine, but I was wrong." Logan didn't say anything for a moment. Then slowly he took his hand out of his pocket and extended it to her. "He's an idiot." Brooke laughed, a wet, shaky laugh. "He is. And you deserve better." "I know." "Do you really?" She looked at him, at that sincere and kind face, and nodded. "I'm starting to." They stood there side by side as the snow began to fall again in light, lazy flakes. And Brooke realized that, for the first time since she'd arrived, she wasn't thinking about her plan, wasn't thinking about lists or schedules or control. She was just there, in the moment, with him. "You know what I think?" Logan said, that playful tone returning to his voice. "I think you need a little chaos in your life." "Chaos?" Brooke raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering?" "Maybe." He bent down, grabbed a handful of snow, and shaped it into a ball. "Starting now." Brooke's eyes widened. "Don't you dare!" But it was too late. The snowball hit her shoulder, exploding in a cloud of icy crystals. She stood there, shocked, mouth open. Logan was laughing, that deep, contagious laugh. "Sorry, I couldn't resist." Something changed in Brooke, something loosened. She bent down, grabbed her own snowball and threw it, hitting Logan square in the chest. "Oh, now it's on." He bent down again, and suddenly they were in a full-blown snowball fight, laughing like children, running through the snow, not caring who was watching. Brooke couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like this. Not a polite or restrained laugh, but a real laugh from deep in her stomach that made her double over. She was soaking wet, freezing, completely disheveled, and she didn't care one bit. Finally they stopped, breathless, cheeks red from cold and exertion. "Okay," Brooke admitted, brushing snow from her hair. "Maybe a little chaos isn't so bad." Logan smiled, And there was something different in his look now, something warmer, more intense. I knew there was a rebel in there. "Don't push it," she said, but she was smiling. They walked back to the cabin together, and Brooke felt something shift between them. The tension was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't discomfort or resistance. It was anticipation. As if they both knew something was happening, something neither could name yet, something that wasn't on any list or plan. And for the first time, Brooke wasn't afraid of it. Night came quickly, as it always did in the mountains during winter. The sky darkened early, transforming into a canvas of deep blue dotted with stars. The temperature dropped even more, and even with the fireplace burning, the cold seemed to find ways into the cabin through small cracks in the windows. Brooke was curled up on the couch, wearing flannel pajamas with snowflake prints and thick socks, a heavy blanket over her legs. She'd tried to read again, but her words kept getting lost on the page. Her mind was elsewhere, or rather, it was focused on someone else. Logan was in the kitchen, stirring pans, opening cabinets, whistling softly that same Christmas melody she still couldn't identify. He seemed completely at ease, as if cooking were as natural to him as breathing. "What are you doing now?" Brooke asked, too curious to pretend she wasn't paying attention. "Surprise," he replied without turning around. "But you're going to like it. I promise." A few minutes later, Logan appeared in the living room carrying 2 large mugs. The sweet, rich aroma of chocolate filled the air, mixed with a hint of cinnamon and something else Brooke couldn't identify. "Hot chocolate," he announced, handing her a mug. "Secret Hayes family recipe. Passed down from generation to generation." Brooke took the mug, feeling the comforting warmth against her palms. "Really?" "No." Logan sat down beside her on the couch, maintaining a respectful distance, but not as distant as before. "Actually, I learned it on YouTube, but it sounds better if I say it's a family recipe." She laughed and took a sip. The flavor exploded in her mouth, rich, creamy chocolate with a touch of vanilla, cinnamon, and... "Is there pepper in this?" "Cayenne pepper. Just a little bit. Warms you from the inside." He took a sip from his own mug, watching her. "So? Approved?" "More than approved. It's incredible." "Great, because I made a whole pot." They sipped in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the fire crackling softly, the snow falling outside. It was one of those moments that seemed suspended in time, perfect in their simplicity. "Can I ask you a question?" Logan said, breaking the silence. "Depends on the question. Why did you really come here alone? And don't tell me it was just because of your ex. There's more, isn't there?" Brooke looked at the mug in her hands, watching the steam rise in lazy spirals. Part of her wanted to deflect, change the subject, raise those walls she'd built so carefully. But another part, a part that was growing with every hour she spent with Logan, wanted to be honest, wanted to be seen. "I spent the last 12 months trying to be perfect," she began, her voice low. "After Ryan left me, I thought that if I could be better, more organized, more productive, more everything, then maybe I wouldn't be abandoned again. So I threw myself into work. I wrote articles about how to live your best life. I gave advice on how to find happiness, and all the while, I was completely miserable." Logan said nothing, just listened, his eyes fixed on her with an attention that was both comforting and intimidating. "And Christmas," Brooke continued, "has always been my favorite time of year. My family always made it special when I was a kid. But in recent years, my parents moved to Florida. My sister has her own family, and all the Christmases I spent with Ryan were always almost perfect. There was always something missing, always some small disappointment. And last year, when he broke up with me on Christmas Eve, it was like all those imperfect Christmases finally made sense. Like I never deserved a perfect Christmas to begin with." Her voice faltered at the end, and she took another sip of hot chocolate to hide the emotion threatening to overflow. "So you came here to create your own perfect Christmas," Logan said softly. "Alone." where no one could disappoint you. Exactly. Brooke finally looked at him. Pathetic, isn't it? No. The word came out firm, definitive. It's sad, but it's not pathetic. What's the difference? Pathetic would be if you'd given up, if you'd stopped trying, but you didn't do that. You came here. You're still fighting for your happiness, even if it's in the wrong way. Brooke blinked, surprised. The wrong way? Logan put his mug on the coffee table and turned to face her completely. Brooke, you can't plan happiness. You can't create a to-do list for a perfect Christmas and expect everything to fall into place. Life doesn't work that way. The best things, the really good things, happen in moments you can't control. In mistakes, in surprises, in chaos. But chaos hurts, she whispered. Chaos takes everything from you. Sometimes, yes, but other times, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Other times, chaos gives you things you didn't even know you needed. They looked at each other, and Brooke felt something move inside her, something that had been dormant for a long time. And you? She asked, trying to lighten the intensity of the moment. Why are you really here, Logan? And don't tell me it's just because of work. Logan sighed, running his hand through his hair. You want the short version or the long one? Long. He smiled slightly, but it was a sad smile. Okay, but you're going to need more hot chocolate for this. He stood up, grabbed the pot from the kitchen, and refilled both their mugs before sitting down. This time, a little closer. I come from a big family, he began. 4 siblings, parents who are still together after 35 years, the perfect American family. Every Christmas is a huge production. Gifts, elaborate dinner, games, traditions. My mum starts planning in October. It's a lot. Doesn't sound so bad. It's not. On the surface. He took a long sip. But there's this expectation, you know? That everyone should be happy, that everything should be perfect. And if you're not happy, if you're going through something difficult, you have to pretend, because you can't ruin everyone's perfect Christmas. Brooke nodded, understanding perfectly. And this year, Logan continued, his voice getting heavier, I couldn't pretend. That little girl I told you about, Emma, she needed a liver transplant. I was transporting the organ from the hospital in Boston to the hospital in Vermont where she was. It should have taken 2 hours, but there was a storm. Mechanical problems. And when I finally arrived, I was 15 minutes too late. He stopped, his jaw tense, his eyes fixed on the fire. Logan. Brooke placed her hand on his arm, an instinctive gesture of comfort. I know it wasn't my fault. My colleagues told me that. My therapist told me that. But when I look in the mirror, all I see is that I failed. That if I'd flown faster, or made a different decision, or... No! Brooke's voice came out firmer than she expected. You can't do that to yourself. You don't control the weather, don't control storms. You did everything you could. But it wasn't enough. It was. It had to be. Because you're human, Logan. You're not a superhero. You're a man who saves lives every day, who risks his own life to help strangers, and who carries the weight of every person he can't save. And that, she squeezed his arm, that doesn't make you a failure. It makes you the bravest person I know. Logan looked at her, and Brooke saw something break in his eyes, a defense falling, a vulnerability being revealed. Thank you, he said, his voice hoarse. Thank you. They stayed like that for a moment, her hand still on his arm, their eyes connected. And then Logan placed his hand over hers. So we both came here running, he said with a sad smile. 2 wounded strangers trying to find a perfect Christmas. Maybe, Brooke said softly, the perfect Christmas isn't about running away. Maybe it's about finding someone who understands. Maybe. Logan turned her hand, intertwining their fingers. The gesture was simple, but it meant everything. You know, When you slipped in that lobby and dropped that ridiculous pink suitcase. Hey, my suitcase isn't ridiculous. I thought, this woman is going to ruin my vacation. He laughed softly. But I was wrong, completely wrong. About the suitcase or about me? About everything. He squeezed her hand. You didn't ruin anything, Brooke. In fact, you're making everything better. Brooke's heart raced. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. So she just squeezed his hand back, letting the gesture speak for her. They spent the rest of the night there, talking about everything and nothing, about childhoods and dreams, about fears and regrets, about favorite movies and songs that made them cry. The hours passed without them noticing, and when Brooke finally looked at the clock, it was past midnight. We broke the quiet rule, she said with a sleepy smile. We did. Logan didn't look even a little bit sorry. Are you going to punish me? I should. But you won't. No. She looked at him, at that face that had become so familiar in such a short time. I won't. Logan stood up, stretching his arms above his head. I should go to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why? Because, he said with a mysterious smile, I'm going to teach you to do something spontaneous. Oh, God. Sleep well, Brooke Carter. You too, Logan Hayes. She went to the bedroom, but not before looking back one last time. Logan was already arranging the blankets on the couch, and there was something so domestic, so right about that scene, that it made her chest tighten. Lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, Brooke realized something frightening. She was no longer alone. Not in the way that mattered, and for the first time in a year, that didn't scare her. In fact, it made her feel complete. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and inside cabin 7, 2 wounded souls were beginning to heal. Together. Brooke woke to the sound of something hitting the window. It wasn't the soft touch of snow she'd grown accustomed to over the past few days. It was something more violent, more urgent. She blinked in the darkness, disoriented, and then realized the wind. The storm had returned, and this time with full force. She got out of bed and went to the window, pulling back the curtain. Outside, the world had disappeared. All she could see was a whirlwind of white, snow being whipped in every direction, tree branches bending dangerously, visibility practically zero. The wind howled like a living creature, making the cabin tremble on its foundation. A shiver ran down her spine. She'd never seen a storm like this. She left the bedroom and found Logan already awake, standing in front of the living room window, arms crossed, watching the storm with a serious expression. "Good morning," she said, her voice coming out more hesitant than she'd intended. He turned, and his face softened when he saw her. "Good morning, sleep well." "Until now." She approached, standing beside him. "Is this normal? For Vermont in December?" "Yes, but this one's particularly strong." He pointed to a nearby pine that was bending dangerously. Winds must be around 60, 70 kilometers per hour, maybe more. "Is it safe for us to stay here?" "For now, yes. The cabin was built to withstand this, but—" He hesitated, biting his lower lip. "I hope everyone else is well prepared." As if in response to his words, there was an urgent knock at the door. They both turned, surprised. Logan went to the door and opened it, struggling against the wind that tried to rip it from his hands. A man stood outside, soaked to the bone, his face red from cold, eyes wide with panic. He must have been around 40, wearing a thin coat that was clearly inadequate for these conditions. "Please," he shouted above the noise of the wind. "I need help! My daughter, she's sick, and our cabin has no heat. The generator stopped working, and it's getting too cold inside." "I don't know what to do." Logan didn't hesitate for even a second. "Where's your cabin?" "Cabin 12, on the other side of the complex." "How many people?" "4. Me, my wife, my 5-year-old daughter. She has asthma, she has a high fever, and my 3-year-old son." Brooke felt her heart tighten. A sick child, in a cabin without heat, during a storm like this. Logan was already moving, grabbing his heavy jacket, his hat, his gloves. "I'll go there. I'll check the generator, see if I can fix it." "If I can't, we'll bring you all here." "Logan, no," Brooke said, grabbing his arm. "You saw outside. It's too dangerous." He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes, an iron determination, an unshakable certainty. "Brooke, there's a sick child out there. I have to go. But I have to go." He covered her hand with his for a brief moment, squeezing gently. "I'll be fine, I promise." She wanted to argue, wanted to say he didn't need to be the hero, that someone else could go, that she couldn't bear it if something happened to him. But she looked at the desperate father at the door, trembling with cold and fear, and understood. Logan wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just being who he was. "Here." Brooke ran to the closet and grabbed extra blankets, a powerful flashlight, the first aid kit she'd brought. "Take this, and please, please, be careful." Logan took the items, his eyes meeting hers for a long moment. "I'll come back, I promise you." And then he was gone, disappearing into the white whirlwind with the child's father. The door closed, and suddenly Brooke was alone. The silence of the cabin was deafening, contrasting with the chaos outside. She stood there for a moment, her heart beating erratically, hands shaking, and it wasn't from the cold. When had he become so important? When had the idea of losing him become unbearable? She didn't know. She only knew that at some point in the last few days, Logan Hayes had stopped being an inconvenient stranger and become something more. Something she wasn't ready to name, but that was real and frightening and impossible to ignore. Brooke started pacing back and forth, biting her thumbnail, a nervous habit she thought she'd overcome years ago. She looked out the window every few seconds, hoping to see some sign of him, but all she saw was white, snow, wind, nothing else. 15 minutes passed, then 20, 30. She made coffee but couldn't drink it. She stoked the fire. She arranged the blankets on the couch, anything to keep her hands busy, to not think about what might be happening out there. What if he got lost? What if the wind knocked him down? What if he got trapped somewhere, alone, freezing? "Stop," she said aloud to the empty cabin. "Just stop." But her mind wouldn't stop. It kept creating increasingly frightening scenarios, each worse than the last. 45 minutes, an hour. Brooke was about to put on her own coat and go out to look for him, a ridiculous idea she knew, but she couldn't just stand there anymore when she heard it. A sound at the door. Muffled voices through the wind. She ran and opened the door. Logan was there, so soaked he looked like he'd jumped in a lake. His coat was covered with ice, his face red and marked by the cold, his lips almost blue. He was shaking violently, teeth chattering, but he was standing, he was alive, he was here. "I did it," he said, his voice hoarse. "I fixed the generator. They're okay now. The girl, she's warm. She's safe." Brooke didn't think. She just reacted. She pulled Logan inside, closing the door against the wind, and immediately started removing his soaked coat. "You're freezing," she said, her own hands shaking as she fought with the stubborn zipper. "My God, Logan, you're completely frozen." "I'm fine," he managed to say between shivers. "Just a little cold." "A little?" She finally got the coat off and threw it on the floor. His clothes underneath were also wet. "You need to get this off. Now, you're going to get hypothermia." She guided him to the bathroom, turned on the shower to the hottest temperature she could without burning, and turned her back while he removed his wet clothes. She heard the sound of heavy fabric hitting the floor, then the sound of the shower curtain being pulled. "Can you stay?" Logan's voice came from inside the shower, still shaking. "Just please don't leave me alone right now." Brooke felt her heart break. "I won't leave you. I promise." She sat on the closed toilet lid, her back to the shower, giving him privacy but staying there as she'd promised. The sound of falling water was almost meditative, and slowly, very slowly, she heard Logan's shivers diminish. "Thank you," he said after a few minutes, his voice more stable now, "for all of this." "You're an idiot," Brooke said, but there was no anger in her voice, just relief. "A brave and stupid idiot." He laughed, a weak but genuine sound. "I've been called worse." "I was so worried. You were out there for over an hour. I thought—" Her voice failed. "Thought what?" "That you weren't coming back, that something had happened to you. And I didn't know what to do with that." There was silence, just the sound of falling water. Then, "But I came back." "You did. I'll always come back, Brooke." There was something in the way he said it, so certain, so definitive, that made tears prick her eyes. She blinked quickly, trying to hold them back. After a few more minutes, the shower was turned off. "Can you hand me a towel?" Brooke grabbed the biggest and fluffiest one she could find and extended it backward, keeping her eyes firmly fixed on the opposite wall. She felt the towel being pulled from her hand. "You can look now," Logan said. "I'm decent." She turned. He was wrapped in the towel from the waist down, hair dripping water, skin still reddened from the heat of the shower, but clearly warmer now. There were scratches on his arms and a superficial cut on his forehead that she hadn't noticed before. "You got hurt." "It was just a branch. Nothing serious." "Nothing serious," she repeated, shaking her head. She grabbed the first aid kit. "Sit." He obeyed, sitting on the edge of the bathtub, and Brooke knelt in front of him. Carefully, she cleaned the cut on his forehead, applied antiseptic. He made a face but didn't complain, and put on a small band-aid. "There," she said softly, but didn't pull away. She stayed there, kneeling between his legs, her hands still on his face. Logan raised his hand and covered one of hers. "I scared you." "Yes. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for saving a child. Never apologize for that." She swallowed hard. "But yes, you scared me, because in 3 days you've become important, and I wasn't prepared for that." His eyes widened slightly. "Important. Yes." She forced the word out. "Important." Logan held her face with both hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "You too. You're important to me too, more than you should be in such a short time." They stayed like that, frozen in that moment, the air between them charged with something electric and inevitable. Brooke could feel her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it, could see her own reflection in his blue eyes, see the vulnerability and desire and fear mirrored back at her. "Logan," she whispered, not knowing what she wanted to say, only knowing she needed to say something. "I know," he replied, as if he understood, as if he always understood. And then the moment passed. He released her face, though it seemed to cost him to do so. "I should get dressed," he said, his voice hoarse, "before I do something stupid." "Like what?" He looked at her, and there was something so intense in his gaze that it took her breath away. "Like kiss you." The world seemed to stop. The air left Brooke's lungs. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Logan stood up, holding the towel. "I'm going to change. You should leave." She nodded, mute, and left the bathroom with shaky legs. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her heart racing, her entire body tingling. He wanted to kiss her, and God, she wanted him to. But he didn't. Why? Out of respect, out of fear, because he knew that if they crossed that line there would be no going back? Brooke didn't know. All she knew was that something had changed, that they'd reached a precipice, and now they needed to decide, retreat to safety or jump together into the unknown. And for the first time in her life, Brooke Carter, the woman of lists, of plans, of control, had no idea what to do. Night fell like a heavy curtain, bringing with it an even more penetrating cold. The storm hadn't diminished. If anything, it seemed to have gained strength. The wind moaned through the cracks, making the cabin creak and groan like a ship on the high seas. But inside, wrapped in the warmth of the fireplace and each other's presence, Brooke and Logan had created their own refuge. After Logan dressed, dry sweatpants and a grey thermal shirt that hugged his chest in a way Brooke tried very hard not to notice, they prepared dinner together. It was a strangely intimate dance in the small kitchen. Him chopping vegetables, her stirring the sauce, their bodies accidentally touching with every movement, each contact sending small electric sparks across her skin. They didn't talk about what had happened in the bathroom, about the words spoken, about the almost kiss that hung between them like an unfulfilled promise. Instead, they talked about simple things, favorite songs, childhood memories, the perfect taste of coffee. It was as if they both knew that acknowledging that moment would mean facing it, and neither was ready yet. But it was there, always there, in the way his eyes lingered on her face, in the way she found excuses to stay close to him, in the charged air that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. After dinner, they settled on the couch, closer this time, their thighs almost touching, sharing the same blanket. Brooke had given up pretending she needed to keep her distance. There was no point, not when every cell in her body pulled toward him. "You know what's funny?" Logan said, stirring the fire with the poker. 3 days ago, I was driving here thinking I was going to have the loneliest Christmas of my life. And now... He turned to look at her, his face illuminated by the golden light of the fire. "Now I don't feel lonely at all." Brooke felt something move in her chest. Me neither. They looked at each other, and the moment stretched, grew heavier. Logan opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by a loud crack. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. Darkness fell over them like a blanket, so sudden and complete that Brooke let out a small cry of surprise. "Easy!" Logan's voice came from the dark, firm and comforting. "It's just the power. Must have been the wind on the lines." "Will it come back?" "Eventually, but it might take a while." She heard sounds of movement, then saw the faint light of a flashlight being turned on. Logan's face appeared in the shadows, illuminated from below, in a way that should have been scary, but somehow was just beautiful. "The fireplace is still working. It's gas-powered. We'll be fine." But even as he said it, Brooke could feel the temperature already beginning to drop. Without the electric heating working, the cabin would cool quickly. Logan seemed to notice too. "I'll get more blankets. And all the coats we have. We'll have to huddle close to the fire." They spent the next few minutes gathering all the warm materials they could find. Blankets, throws, coats, even the fluffy towels from the bathroom. Logan pulled the mattress from the sofa bed and dragged it right up to the fireplace, then started piling on the blankets. "We'll have to share body heat," he said, not looking at her. "It's the most efficient way to stay warm. If you're comfortable with that." Brooke swallowed hard. Share body heat. That meant being close, very close, possibly touching. "I'm comfortable," she heard herself say. They lay down on the makeshift mattress side by side under what felt like 10 pounds of blankets. At first, they maintained a respectful distance, a good 6 inches of space between their bodies. But the cold was relentless, seeping through every layer, and slowly, inevitably, they began to move closer. First, it was his arm touching hers, then their hips. Then Logan turned on his side, facing her. "You're shaking." "I'm cold," she admitted, teeth beginning to chatter. "Come here." He opened his arms, a silent invitation. Brooke hesitated for only a second before moving closer, letting him wrap her up. She nestled against his chest, her head resting in the space between his shoulder and neck, his arm around her waist. The warmth of his body enveloped her immediately, more effective than any blanket. "Better," he murmured against the top of her head. "Better," she whispered. They stayed like that, quiet, listening to the storm rage outside and the fire crackle inside. Brooke's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could feel it against his chest. She could feel his breath in her hair, the firmness of his muscles against her body, the scent of him, wood and soap and something indefinable that was purely Logan. "Brooke," he said after long minutes of silence. About earlier, in the bathroom, what I said." She pulled back slightly, just enough to look at his face in the faint firelight. "About kissing me?" "Yes." His hand on her waist tightened slightly. "I shouldn't have said that. It was inappropriate." "Why?" "Because we barely know each other. Because you came here to be alone. Because... What if I wanted you to kiss me?" The words came out before she could stop them, brave in the darkness in a way they would never be in daylight. Logan went very still. "Do you?" Brooke took a deep breath. There was no going back now. No more hiding. "Yes, I do." She saw something change in his eyes. Saw desire burn through caution. "Are you sure? Because if I kiss you now, Brooke, I don't know if I'll be able to stop." "Then don't stop." That was all he needed to hear. Logan brought his hand to her face, fingers sliding through her hair, thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. "From the moment I saw you slip in that lobby with your ridiculous pink suitcase, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." Brooke laughed softly. "My suitcase isn't—" But her words were swallowed when he finally kissed her. It was soft at first, almost hesitant, lips touching carefully, exploring, asking. The taste of him was mint and hot chocolate and something deeper, darker. Brooke felt something inside her melt, then ignite. Her hands moved to his chest, feeling the hard muscles beneath the thin shirt, feeling his heart beating as fast as hers. Logan deepened the kiss, pulling her closer, and Brooke responded with an intensity that surprised her. There was no more gentleness, just need. Their mouths moved together as if trying to make up for all the lost time, all the kisses they hadn't shared in the last few days, all the tension that had been building since that first glance in the lobby. He turned her onto her back, his body covering hers without crushing her, and Brooke felt the weight of him, the solidity of him, and wanted more. Her hands slid through his hair, pulling him closer, deeper, as if she could devour him whole. "God, Brooke!" Logan gasped against her mouth, then kissed her jaw, her neck, that sensitive spot just behind her ear that made her arch against him. "You have no idea what you do to me." "Show me," she whispered, barely recognizing her own voice, husky, needy, desperate. But then Logan stopped. He pulled away just enough to look into her eyes, his breathing heavy, lips swollen. "Wait, wait." "What? Why?" Brooke tried to pull him back, but he held her hands gently. "Because I don't want this to be just about the moment, about the cold or the darkness or us being stuck here." He brought one of her hands to his lips, kissing the knuckles. "I want this to be real. I want you to be sure." Brooke looked at him, at this beautiful, impossible man who had entered her life like a hurricane and turned everything upside down. Who cooked for her, who made her laugh, who risked his life to save strangers, who held her like she was something precious. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she said. And it was true. Maybe for the first time, it was completely true. Logan studied her face for a long moment, searching for, what, doubt? Fear? Whatever it was, he didn't find it. Because all Brooke felt was certainty and desire, and something deeper that she still wasn't ready to name. "Okay," he finally said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Okay." And then he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no stopping. There was just the two of them, intertwined under a mountain of blankets, the fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls, the storm raging outside as if applauding. Logan's hands slid under her sweatshirt, his palm warm against her cold skin, and Brooke gasped into his mouth. Her fingers found the hem of his shirt and pulled it up, and Logan pulled away just long enough to yank it over his head before returning to her. Skin against skin now, heat against heat. Brooke traced the lines of his muscles, feeling him tremble under her touch. There were scars there, small, barely visible in the faint light, and she kissed each one, silently asking and silently understanding. "Brooke," Logan groaned, his control clearly slipping. "If you want me to stop, you need to tell me now." "Don't stop," she whispered against his mouth. "Please, don't stop." And he didn't stop. They lost themselves in each other. Two strangers who somehow were no longer strangers. Clothes were removed, tossed aside without care. Hands explored. Lips tasted. Bodies fit together like puzzle pieces that had finally found their match. And when Logan finally made her his, slowly, with such reverence that it brought tears to her eyes, Brooke understood. Understood that it wasn't about control, wasn't about plans or lists or perfect Christmases. It was about this moment, this man, this connection that defied logic and time and all sensible reason. They moved together in the dark, an ancient rhythm that was both new and familiar, and Brooke felt something inside her break and rebuild simultaneously, felt all the walls she'd built around her heart crumble, felt herself vulnerable and powerful and completely, absolutely alive. "Look at me," Logan whispered, and she obeyed. Their eyes met in the darkness, and there was something so intimate in that gaze, more intimate than any physical touch, that it took her breath away. "I see you, Brooke. I really see you." And it was true. She could feel it. He saw her, not the perfect journalist, not the woman with the color-coded lists, but her, the real Brooke, with all her fears and wounds and imperfections. And he didn't run. He stayed. When they finally reached the peak together, hands intertwined, breaths mingled, Brooke buried her face in his neck and let the tears fall. Tears of relief, of joy, of something that felt dangerously like love. Logan held her through it, kissing her forehead, her eyes, her wet cheeks. "I'm here," he murmured. "I'm right here." Afterward, when their breathing calmed and the world slowly came back into focus, they lay intertwined under the blankets. The fire still crackled, the storm still raged, but none of it mattered. Brooke traced lazy patterns on Logan's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "That changed everything," she whispered. "I know." He kissed the top of her head. "It really did. I'm scared." "Me too. But I don't regret it." "Neither do I." He tilted her face up, forcing her to look at him. "Zero regrets, Brooke Carter. None." She smiled, and it was a real smile, not forced, not planned, just happy. Zero regrets. They fell asleep like that, bodies intertwined, covered by a mountain of blankets, the fire casting a soft glow over their skin. And when the lights finally came back on at 3 a.m, neither woke to notice. They were too lost in each other's arms, too lost in this new world they'd created together. Outside, the storm eventually passed. But inside Cabin 7, something new had been born, something fragile and precious and full of possibilities. And for the first time in a year, Brooke Carter didn't feel lost, she felt found. Morning arrived gently and quietly. The storm had passed during the early hours, leaving behind a transformed world. Through the window, Brooke could see the pristine snow glistening in the sunlight. Tree branches bowed under the white weight, the sky blue and clear, as if the storm had never existed. She woke slowly, aware first of the warmth, so much warmth after the cold of the previous night, then of the steady breathing against her neck, of the heavy arm around her waist, of the solid body pressed against her back. Logan. The memories of the previous night came back in waves. The kiss, the touch, the way he'd made her feel completely seen for the first time in her life. Brooke closed her eyes, allowing herself to just exist in that moment for a few more seconds. But then reality began to seep in, bringing with it a flood of questions she wasn't sure how to answer. What were they now? What did this mean? And more importantly, what would happen when Christmas ended and real life came back? "You're thinking out loud," Logan's sleepy voice murmured in her ear, still heavy with sleep. I can practically hear the gears turning." Brooke turned in his arms, finding those blue eyes already looking at her. There was an amused gleam in them, but also something softer, more vulnerable. "Good morning," she said, suddenly shy in a way that didn't make sense considering what they'd shared. "Good morning." He kissed the tip of her nose. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." It was true. Despite the makeshift mattress, despite the power outage, she'd slept deeply, dreamlessly, completely at peace. "You?" "Like a rock." Logan stretched, his muscles rippling in a way that made Brooke's mouth go dry. "I think there's something about surviving a storm together that really tires a person out." He said it lightly, but Brooke caught the subtext. Surviving a storm. Not just the physical one, but the emotional one too. They'd weathered something together, and now they were on the other side, transformed. "Logan," she began, not knowing exactly what she wanted to say, but feeling the need to say something. But before she could continue, Brooke's phone rang from across the room. They both looked at where it sat on the coffee table, the screen lighting up in the bright morning. "You should answer," Logan said, but there was something in his voice, a tension that wasn't there seconds before. Brooke slipped out of the warm nest of blankets, the cold air making her skin prickle. She grabbed one of Logan's shirts thrown on the floor, a soft flannel that smelled like him, and put it on before grabbing the phone. The name on the screen made her stomach twist. Ryan. She looked at Logan, who was now sitting up, the blankets around his waist, watching her with an unreadable expression. It's my ex," she said, hating how her voice wavered. Something passed over Logan's face. Too quick to identify, but it looked like pain. "You should answer." "I don't need to." "Brooke, answer it." She swiped her finger across the screen, accepting the call. "Hello?" "Brooke, thank God." Ryan's voice poured through the phone, and suddenly she was back a year ago, remembering all the times that voice had made her heart race. Now, it was just a voice. "I've been trying to call you for days. Are you okay? I heard about the storm in Vermont." "I'm fine," she said, walking to the window, putting distance between herself and Logan, even though she didn't want to. "What do you want, Ryan?" Is this a bad time?" "Kind of, yes." "I'm sorry. It's just, I needed to talk to you." "About us?" Brooke closed her eyes. "There is no us, Ryan. You made that pretty clear a year ago." "I know, and I was an idiot, a complete idiot." He paused, and she could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Brooke, I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. Leaving you was the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I've spent this entire year realizing that." Brooke's heart raced, but not in the way it used to. Not with hope or joy, with something closer to panic. "Ryan, no, please just listen to me. I've changed. I went to therapy. I worked on myself. And I realized that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I want another chance. I want to fix this. I want—" His voice broke. "I want you back." Silence. The world seemed to stop. A year ago, those words would have meant everything, would have healed all wounds, would have answered all the prayers she didn't even know she was making. But now all she could think about was Logan. About the way he made her laugh, about the way he really saw her, about the way his touch set her skin on fire, about the way, for the first time in her life, she felt whole. "I can't have this conversation right now," she finally said, her voice firm despite the chaos in her mind. "When then?" "Brooke, I flew to New York. I'm here. I can be in Vermont in a few hours. We can talk in person, like we should have from the beginning." "No." The word came out louder than she'd intended. "Don't come here, Ryan, seriously." "But I need to go, bye." She hung up before he could respond, the phone shaking in her hand. When she turned, Logan was getting dressed, pulling on his pants, his back to her, shoulders rigid. "Logan, he wants you back," Logan said, his voice flat. It wasn't a question. "Yes." But, but nothing, Brooke. He turned to face her, and there was something in his eyes that made her step back, not anger. Something worse, resignation. He wants you back. And you have history, 3 years of history. I'm just the guy you met 3 days ago. Don't say that. Brooke crossed the distance between them, grabbing his arm. You're not just anything. Last night was what? He pulled away from her touch, and the loss of contact made her physically cold. Was real, or was it just two lonely strangers comforting each other during a storm? You know it wasn't that. Do I? Logan ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your ex-boyfriend, the guy you spent a year trying to get over, just said he wants you back. And you didn't say no. I told him not to come here. But you didn't say it was over. You didn't say you were with someone else. Because we barely know each other. Because I don't know what we are or what this means. The words burst out like an explosion, raw and honest. Logan went very quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more controlled, but somehow more painful. You're right. We barely know each other. And maybe I got carried away. Maybe I confused isolation with connection. Don't do this. Tears began to prick Brooke's eyes. Don't minimize what happened between us. Then what happened, Brooke? Tell me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're afraid to admit that this meant something. Of course it meant something. She practically shouted the words. It meant everything. But give me a damn second to process, okay? I spent a year building walls, a year convincing myself I was better off alone, and then you show up with your stupid smile and your perfect hot chocolate and your ridiculous courage, and suddenly all those walls are crumbling, and I don't know how to deal with it. Logan blinked, clearly surprised by the outburst. Brooke, and yes, Ryan called. And yes, he wants another chance. But you know what? I don't want to give it to him, because he had his chance. He had 3 years of chances and threw me away like I was nothing. Tears were falling freely now, but she didn't care. And then you show up and make me feel like I'm worth everything. Like I'm enough exactly as I am. And that terrifies me, Logan. It terrifies me because we've known each other for 3 days. And I already can't imagine my life without you. The silence that followed was deafening. Brooke was gasping, heart hammering, vulnerable in a way she'd never been before. She'd laid herself completely bare, and now she could only wait. Logan took a step toward her, then another, and then his hands were on her face, wiping away the tears with his thumbs. 3 days, he said softly. 3 ridiculous, impossible, perfect days. I know it doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to make sense. He pressed his forehead to hers. Brooke, when that phone rang and I saw the way you looked at it, I panicked because I realized I could lose you, that maybe you'd choose the familiar over the unknown. And the idea of that destroyed me. I'm not going to choose him, she whispered. I already chose. I chose you before I even realized I was choosing. Logan kissed her then, not with the burning passion of the night before, but with something deeper, more permanent, a kiss that felt like a promise. I'm sorry, he murmured against her lips, for doubting you, for letting my own fears speak. I'm sorry for not being clear from the start, for hesitating when I shouldn't have. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other, breathing together. And then Brooke's phone rang again. They both looked at it. Ryan again. Answer it, Logan said, but this time there was confidence in his voice. And be clear. Brooke picked up the phone and answered. Ryan, Brooke, please just no. Her voice was firm now, no hesitation. There's no second chance, Ryan. You had your opportunity and wasted it, and I spent a year thinking there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't enough. But I was. I always was. You just weren't ready to see me. But now I am. Now it's too late. Because I met someone. Someone who makes me feel seen, who makes me laugh, who makes me want to be brave. And yes, I've only known him for 3 days, which is completely crazy. But Ryan, in those 3 days, I've felt more than I felt in 3 years with you." She looked at Logan as she spoke, seeing the slow smile spread across his face, seeing something soften in his eyes. "So that's it?" Ryan's voice was small now, hurt. "That's it. And Ryan, I wish you the best, truly. But we're done. We've been done for a year, and it's more than time for both of us to move on." She hung up before he could respond and put the phone aside. "So," Logan said, pulling her back into his arms, "you've known me for 3 days and already feel more for me than you felt for him in 3 years. That's a lot of pressure for a guy to handle." Brooke laughed through the tears. "Can you handle it?" "Oh, I think I can manage." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Because it happens that I also feel more for you in 3 days than I thought possible to feel for anyone. This is crazy. Completely. It doesn't make any sense. None. But it's real. More real than anything I've ever felt." Logan held her tighter. "And Brooke, I don't care if it's too fast or too crazy or scares everyone around us. I want this. I want you. I want to figure out how we make this work when we go back to real life." "Me too," she whispered against his chest. "I want that too." And in that moment, with the sun streaming through the windows and the world transformed by snow outside, Brooke finally understood. Love doesn't follow timelines, doesn't follow plans or lists or logic. Sometimes it just happens, fast and scary and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. And for the first time in her life, she was ready to let it happen. The resort's Christmas dinner was scheduled for 7 in the evening. It was the main event of the festivities, an elaborate celebration in the main hall with luxurious decorations, live music, and a 5-course dinner prepared by renowned chefs. All guests were invited, and the atmosphere promised to be magical. Brooke spent the entire afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation. It wasn't about the dinner itself. She'd attended dozens of sophisticated events because of work. It was the growing awareness that this would be the first time she and Logan would appear together publicly. As what, exactly? A couple? 2 strangers who fell in love in 3 days? She wasn't sure how to name it, but she knew it meant something. "Are you okay?" Logan asked, watching her from the couch as she opened the closet for the 3rd time, looking at the dress she'd brought specifically for that night. "Yes, I'm just a little nervous. About the dinner? About everything." She turned to face him. "Logan, this is the first time we're going to be around other people, as us, whatever us means." He stood up and walked over to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "It means we're 2 people who care about each other, who want to be together. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. But people will look, they'll judge. They'll think it's strange that we've known each other for 3 days and are already in love," he said with that amused smile that always disarmed her. "Let them think. It doesn't change what's true." Brooke blinked. "In love?" Logan went very still, realizing what he'd said. Then slowly a smile formed. "Yes, in love. Or at least I am. Completely, ridiculously in love with you, Brooke Carter." Her heart stopped. Then it raced so fast she felt dizzy. "You are?" "Yes. And before you panic and start making lists of all the reasons why this is a bad idea, let me be very clear. I don't expect you to say it back. Not now. Not until you're ready. But I needed you to know. I needed to be honest." Tears pricked Brooke's eyes. "Logan, no pressure, okay?" He kissed her forehead. "Now go get dressed. I want to see you in that dress." She went to the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against it, her heart still racing. He loved her. Logan Hayes, the man who saved lives, who made perfect hot chocolate, who really saw her, loved her. And the scariest thing? She loved him back. Had known for a day, maybe two. But hearing him say it first, hearing the certainty in his voice, made everything feel more real, more terrifying, more perfect. She got ready carefully, applying light makeup, styling her hair in loose waves that fell over her shoulders. And then she put on the dress, a deep red velvet dress fitted in all the right places, falling to her knees, with a modest but elegant neckline. She'd bought it specifically for that night, imagining wearing it alone, a silent statement that she was fine without anyone. But now, looking at her reflection, she didn't see loneliness. She saw a woman in love, a woman brave enough to let love in. When she emerged from the bathroom, Logan was waiting, and the way his face changed when he saw her, the way his eyes widened, how his mouth opened slightly, made every second of preparation worth it. "Wow," he breathed. "Brooke, you're... wow." She laughed, blushing. "Is that a good wow? It's an I have no words because you literally took my breath away kind of wow." He approached, taking her hands. "You're absolutely stunning. You're not so bad yourself." And it was true. Logan was wearing dark dress pants and a grey shirt that hugged his shoulders perfectly. The sleeves rolled to his elbows. He'd shaved, but left a shadow that gave him a dangerously attractive look. They walked together to the main hall, hands intertwined. Brooke could feel eyes on them, other guests noticing, whispering, speculating. But whenever nervousness started to grow, Logan would squeeze her hand, and she'd remember, this was real. And real was worth any discomfort. The hall had been transformed into a winter fairy tale. White lights twinkled on the ceiling, creating the illusion of a starry sky. There were Christmas trees in every corner, decorated with silver and gold ornaments. Round tables were arranged in a semicircle around a small dance floor, each with elaborate centerpieces of pine cones, candles, and white flowers. A string quartet played soft Christmas songs in the corner, and the aroma of pine, cinnamon, and delicious food filled the air. "This is amazing," Brooke whispered, looking around in wonder. "It is, but not as amazing as you." She rolled her eyes, but was smiling. "You're not going to stop with the cheesy lines, are you?" "Never." He guided her to a table, pulled out her chair like a perfect gentleman, and sat beside her. The dinner was a surreal experience. The food was spectacular, each course more elaborate than the last. The wine flowed freely. The conversations around them were animated and warm. But Brooke barely noticed anything beyond Logan. The way he laughed at her jokes, the way his hand found hers under the table, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in the hall. After the main course, the resort manager stepped onto the small stage where the quartet had been playing. He welcomed everyone, wished them a Merry Christmas, and then announced that the stage was open for any guest who wanted to share something, a song, a story, a Christmas message. Several guests took turns. An elderly man played guitar and sang a song about his late wife. A little girl read a poem about Santa Claus. A couple announced their engagement to enthusiastic applause. And then Logan stood up. Brooke looked at him, confused. "What are you doing?" "Something spontaneous," he said with a nervous smile. "Something I should have planned but didn't because, well, I'm not you." "Logan!" But he was already walking to the stage. The manager handed him the microphone, and suddenly all eyes in the hall were on him. Brooke felt her heart race, half in anticipation, half in terror. Logan cleared his throat, clearly nervous in a way she'd never seen him. "Hi, I'm Logan, and I didn't plan this, so let's see how it goes." Light laughter rippled through the crowd. "I came to this resort 3 days ago," he continued, his eyes finding Brooke's across the room. "I came alone, running from Christmas, running from expectations, running from myself, honestly. I thought I knew what I wanted, solitude, peace, time to think. But then something happened that I didn't plan, something that changed everything." Brooke felt tears begin to form. She knew where this was going, and part of her wanted to run, hide, not be in the spotlight. But a bigger part, the part he'd awakened, wanted to stay, wanted to listen, wanted to be brave. "I met someone," Logan said, his voice growing stronger, more certain. "A beautiful, intelligent, way too organized for her own good woman." More laughter. "A woman who came here for the same reason I did, to escape, to find something she thought she'd lost. And because of a ridiculous reservation error, we ended up sharing a cabin. And in those 3 days..." He paused, clearing his throat again, emotion clear in his voice. "In those 3 days, she changed my life." The silence in the hall was total. Everyone was listening, captivated. "Brooke Carter," Logan said, and hearing her name echo through the hall made Brooke's heart leap. "You taught me that love doesn't follow timelines, that sometimes the best things happen when you stop planning and just let life happen. You taught me that 3 days can mean more than 3 years, if they're the right 3 days. And you taught me that being completely, vulnerably, ridiculously in love isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing anyone can do." Tears were falling freely down Brooke's face now. She didn't try to stop them. "So I want to say, in front of all these people who don't know us and have no idea why this is so crazy." He smiled, that smile she loved so much. "I love you. And I know it's too soon and too fast, and every sensible person would say I'm insane. But I don't care. Because for the first time in my life I found someone who makes every second worth it. Someone I don't want to live without. And if that makes me crazy, then so be it." The room exploded in applause. People whistled. Others wiped away tears of their own. But Brooke barely registered any of it. All she saw was Logan, coming down from the stage, walking toward her with that determined look that made her knees weak. When he reached her, he extended his hand. "Dance with me." She didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. He led her to the dance floor, and the quartet began to play. A slow, gentle version of "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Logan pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other intertwined with hers. They swayed softly, lost in each other's eyes, the rest of the world disappearing. "Do you hate me for doing that?" he whispered. "No," she whispered back, her voice choked. "I love you for it." He stopped dancing. "What did you say?" Brooke took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed. "I said I love you. I love you, Logan Hayes, completely, ridiculously, terrifyingly. And you're right, it's crazy, it's too fast, but it's real, and I don't want to run anymore." The smile that spread across his face was pure sunshine. He picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh through the tears, and then he kissed her, right there on the dance floor in front of everyone, a kiss that was promise and celebration and pure, uninhibited love. The applause echoed again, but neither Brooke nor Logan noticed. They were too lost in each other, too lost in this perfect moment that neither had planned but both desperately needed. When they finally pulled apart, Logan pressed his forehead to hers. "Best Christmas ever," he whispered. "The best," she agreed. And as they danced under the twinkling lights, surrounded by strangers who had become witnesses to their love, Brooke finally understood. The perfect Christmas didn't come from impeccable decorations or gourmet food or expensive gifts. It didn't come from meticulously executed plans or rigidly followed schedules. The perfect Christmas, the perfect life, came from love. Real, messy, imperfect, absolutely real love. It came from finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and loved you not despite your flaws, but including them. It came from letting the walls fall, from risking your heart, from trusting that sometimes the best gifts are the ones we never asked for. She'd come to Vermont a year ago seeking solitude, seeking control, seeking a perfect Christmas that existed only in her imagination. And she found something so much better. She found Logan. She found love. She found herself. And as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in white silence, Brooke Carter closed her eyes and made a silent promise. Never again would she try to control everything. Never again would she be afraid of chaos, because chaos had given her the greatest gift of all. It had given her a home, not a place, but a person. And that, she finally understood, was what she'd always been searching for. The perfect Christmas wasn't planned. It just happened when you least expected it, in the most unexpected way. And thanks to a reservation error, a snowstorm, and a meddling best friend, Brooke had found hers, forever. The walk back to the cabin was silent, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of the first days. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people have said everything they needed to say, and now just existed together, side by side, hands intertwined, steps synchronized. The snow crunched softly under their feet. The air was freezing, but Brooke barely felt the cold. She was too wrapped up in the warmth of the moment, in the way Logan held her hand like he'd never let go, in the way he looked at her from time to time with that soft smile that said more than 1,000 words. "You're quiet," Logan observed when they reached the cabin door. "I'm just processing." Brooke looked at him under the soft porch lights. "You declared your love for me in front of 100 strangers. I know. Was it too much?" "It was perfect." She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. "It was absolutely perfect." Logan unlocked the door, and they entered, the warmth of the cabin immediately enveloping them. He lit the fireplace while Brooke took off her shoes, her feet aching pleasantly after hours in heels. "Wine?" Logan offered, going to the kitchen. "Please." He returned with 2 glasses of red wine, handing her one before sitting on the couch. Brooke joined him, curling her legs under her body, the red dress spreading around her like petals. "So," Logan said after a long sip, "that was quite a night." "It was." Brooke smiled against the rim of her glass. "I think we officially became that couple. That couple who met 3 days ago and is hopelessly in love." He laughed. "Yeah, we're definitely that couple." "No regrets." "About what? About publicly declaring myself? About admitting I'm in love with a woman I met less than a week ago?" He put his glass on the table and turned to face her completely. "No. Not even a little." "You?" Brooke thought about it. About how, 3 days ago, she'd arrived here seeking solitude and control. About how every plan she'd made had crumbled the moment Logan entered her life. But how everything she thought she wanted turned out to be exactly the opposite of what she really needed. "No," she finally said. "I don't regret anything." Logan took her glass and placed it beside his. Then, in one fluid motion, he pulled her onto his lap, making her straddle his legs. His hands found her waist, firm and warm through the velvet of the dress. "You were so beautiful tonight," he murmured, his eyes tracing every line of her face. "So perfectly beautiful that I could barely concentrate on dinner." "You were pretty distracted too," Brooke said, her fingers playing with the buttons of his shirt. "I saw you looking at me." Hard not to look. His hand slid up her back, finding the zipper of the dress. "May I?" Her heart raced. "Yes." Slowly, with a reverence that made her skin prickle, Logan lowered the zipper. The sound of the metal sliding seemed thunderous in the cabin's silence. The dress loosened, and he helped pull it over her head, revealing black lace underneath. Logan exhaled audibly. "Are you trying to kill me?" Brooke smiled, feeling a feminine power she rarely allowed herself to feel. "Maybe." Mission accomplished. He traced the line of lace at her hip with his finger, his eyes dark with desire. Absolutely accomplished. She began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers working each button with deliberate care. When she finally opened the shirt and pushed it off his shoulders, she took a moment to just look, to appreciate the way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the defined lines of his abdomen, the way his chest rose and fell with heavy breathing. "My God, you're beautiful," she whispered, and it wasn't a rehearsed line or an empty compliment. It was pure truth. Logan pulled her closer, skin against skin, and the contact made them both gasp. "Bed," he murmured against her lips. "I want to make love to you properly, in bed, where I can take my time." Brooke nodded, unable to form words, and he lifted her, she automatically wrapping her legs around his waist, and carried her to the bedroom. He laid her on the bed carefully, as if she were something precious, and then stood for a moment, just looking at her. "What?" she asked, suddenly shy under the intensity of his gaze. "Just want to remember this. You, like this. Because Brooke," his voice grew hoarse, "you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Tears pricked her eyes, tears of happiness, of feeling seen, of feeling loved in a way she'd never experienced before. Logan joined her on the bed, his body covering hers, and they lost themselves in each other. But this time it was different from the first night in front of the fireplace. There was no urgency, no desperation born from the storm and cold. There was just time. Time to explore, to savor, to discover every sound the other made, every touch that drew gasps, every kiss that promised forever. "I love you," Logan whispered against her skin as his hands traced patterns of fire on her hips. "I love you," Brooke replied, her fingers tangling in his hair as he kissed her throat, her collarbone, the valley between her breasts. They removed the rest of their clothes, slowly, reverently, until there was nothing between them except skin and warmth and love. And when Logan finally slid inside her, both their eyes met and locked, and Brooke felt something inside her complete, as if her entire life had led to this moment, to this person, to this love. They moved together, a slow and deep rhythm that spoke of something more than physical desire. It was connection, it was vulnerability, it was two souls finding their home in each other. "Look at me," Logan asked, and she obeyed. "I want to see you. I want to see everything." And she let him. Let all the masks fall, all the defenses, all the walls she'd built over the years. Let him see her joy and her fear and her overwhelming love. Let herself be completely, vulnerably, irrevocably seen. And he didn't run. He stayed. He held her. He loved her through all of it. When they finally reached climax together, it was with each other's names on their lips and tears in their eyes and an absolute certainty that no matter what happened, they'd found something rare, something precious, something that would be worth any challenge that came their way. Afterward, lying intertwined under the sheets, the only sound being their breathing calming and the soft crackling of the fireplace in the living room, Logan kissed her forehead. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. Brooke's heart jumped. "What?" "I don't want this to end when Christmas is over. I don't want us to go back to our lives and pretend this was just a vacation fling." "Me neither," she admitted. "But Logan, our lives are completely different. You live in Boston. I live in New York. You have flight missions. I have article deadlines. How do we make this work?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know I want to try. I know I want you in my life, Brooke. Not just now, during Christmas, but after too. In January and February and every month after that. This is going to be hard. I know. It'll require commitment, travel, sacrifices. I know." He turned her so they were facing each other, his eyes serious. "But you're worth it. This is worth it. And yes, it's going to be hard, but nothing worth having is easy, right?" Brooke thought about all her lists, all her plans, all the relationships she'd tried to force into neat boxes because she thought that's how love should work. But Logan was right. Love wasn't neat. It wasn't convenient. It was messy and complicated and required work. But it was also this feeling, this connection. This certainty that she'd found someone worth any inconvenience. "Okay," she said, "let's try, let's make this work." The smile that lit up his face was worth more than 1,000 perfect Christmases. "But," she added, trying to look serious, "we're going to need a plan. Visitation schedules, communication timeline, clear expectations." Logan silenced her with a kiss. "You and your lists. Someone has to keep things organized. And I wouldn't change that for anything." He pulled her closer, his breathing beginning to get heavier again. "But right now, I just want to make love to you again, and again, and again, until the sun comes up." "Ambitious," Brooke murmured, but she was already melting into his arms. "You have no idea." And so the night unfolded in a dance of passion and tenderness, of laughter and whispers and promises made in the dark. They made love 2 more times before dawn, once slowly, savoring every touch, and once with a renewed urgency that left them breathless and amazed. And each time, Brooke felt the last pieces of her broken heart come together, felt herself healed, complete, ready to believe in love again. When they finally fell asleep as the sky began to lighten, they were so intertwined it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. And Brooke, in her last moments of consciousness, had a simple but profound thought. She'd come here seeking a perfect Christmas and found something so much better. She found love, real, messy, gloriously imperfect love. And there wasn't a list in the world that could have planned something as perfect as this. 12 months, 365 days, 52 weeks of video calls and weekend visits and good morning and good night texts. Of meeting each other's friends, families, the worlds each had built before they met. Of fights over silly things and even sweeter reconciliations. Of learning each other's rhythms, quirks, hidden fears and secret dreams. 1 year since that Christmas that changed everything. And now, on Christmas Eve again, Brooke Carter was back at Pine Ridge Resort in Vermont, looking out the window of a rental car as Logan drove down the winding road she remembered so well. "Nervous?" Logan asked, taking her hand and intertwining their fingers. "A little," she admitted. "It's strange coming back, like we're trying to recreate something that can't be recreated." "We're not trying to recreate anything." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles. "We're just revisiting, celebrating where it all began." Brooke looked at him, her fiancé now, the simple diamond ring on her left finger still making her heart skip every time it caught the light. Logan had proposed 6 months ago during a picnic in Central Park, with no big production, just the two of them, and a quiet certainty that this was right. His transfer to New York had been approved in February. He moved into her apartment in March, not because it was convenient, but because neither of them could bear sleeping in separate beds anymore. And since then, they'd built a life together. A real life, with bills to pay and household chores, and discussions about whether they should buy or rent, and where they wanted to spend Christmas. And they'd decided back to where it all began. When they arrived at the resort, Brooke felt a wave of nostalgia so strong it almost took her breath away. Everything seemed exactly the same. The twinkling lights, the giant tree in the lobby, the smell of cinnamon and pine. Even the snow was falling exactly the same way, in thick, lazy flakes that promised a magical night. "Remember when you slipped right there?" Logan pointed to the polished lobby floor, that amused smile playing on his lips. "How could I forget?" Brooke rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "It was the most humiliating moment of my life. It was the luckiest moment of mine." He pulled her close, kissing her hair. "Because if you hadn't slipped, maybe we wouldn't have talked. Maybe you would have gotten your own cabin, and I'd have gotten mine, and we never would have met." She shuddered at the thought. A world where she didn't know Logan, where she didn't have this love. It was unthinkable now. "Welcome back, Mr. Hayes, Miss Carter." The receptionist, the same woman from a year ago, greeted them with a warm smile. We're so happy to have you with us again. And congratulations on the engagement. Thank you, Brooke and Logan said in unison, exchanging a look and laughing. You're in cabin 7 again. By special request, I believe. The receptionist winked. No reservation errors this time. No errors, Logan confirmed, taking the keys, though to be honest, that error was the best thing that ever happened to me. As they walked to the cabin, the same path through the snow, the same pines bowed under the white weight, the same twinkling lights in the windows, Brooke allowed herself to travel back in time. She remembered how nervous she'd been, how she'd resisted every step of the way, how she'd been determined to maintain control over everything, especially her feelings. What a fool she'd been. What a lucky fool. When Logan opened the door to cabin 7, Brooke entered and stopped. It was exactly as she remembered, down to the smallest detail. The fireplace, the leather couch, the small Christmas tree in the corner, the kitchen where they'd cooked together, the bedroom door where everything had changed. "Are you okay?" Logan asked, hugging her from behind. "Yes, it's a lot. All the memories. Good memories, I hope. The best." She turned in his arms. "Logan, you know I love you, right? Like, ridiculously, impossibly, completely." "I know," he smiled. "Because I love you the same way. I'll always love you like that." They spent the afternoon unpacking, lighting the fireplace, making hot chocolate, Logan's secret recipe that Brooke now knew by heart. And later, when night fell, and they were curled up on the couch exactly as they had been a year ago, Logan cleared his throat. "So, there's something I need to tell you." Brooke looked at him, noticing an uncommon nervousness in his expression. "What is it? You know how this whole relationship started because of that reservation error?" "Yes." "Well, it wasn't exactly an error." Brooke blinked. "What do you mean?" Logan took a deep breath. "Remember your best friend, Madison? The one you were always mentioning on the first day?" "Of course. Why?" "She may have contacted me a few weeks before last Christmas." Brooke's world stopped. "She what?" "She saw my profile on a dating site. Recognized that I'd booked Pine Ridge Resort for the same dates as you, and she may have hacked the reservation system and put us in the same cabin on purpose." Brooke sat up, pulling away from him. "You're kidding." "I'm not." Logan grabbed his phone and pulled up a string of messages. "Look, she sent me all of this. Said you'd been unhappy for a year, that you were closing yourself off, that you needed someone to make you open up again. And she thought I could be that person." Brooke took the phone, reading the messages with growing disbelief. There it all was, Madison explaining the situation, begging Logan to just give it a chance, promising that Brooke was amazing if he could get through her defenses. She planned all of this," Brooke murmured. "Apparently." Logan looked genuinely guilty. "I didn't know how to tell you. At first I was upset too. I don't like being manipulated. But then I met you, and I realized it didn't matter how it happened. What mattered was that it happened." Brooke looked at him, then at the phone, then back at him. And then, surprisingly, she started to laugh. "You're laughing?" Logan looked confused. "Yes." She laughed harder, tears of amusement streaming down her face. "Because it's so Madison. She was always trying to set me up with someone, always saying I needed to live a little. Yeah, and when all her normal attempts failed, she literally hacked a hotel reservation system. So you're not mad?" "Oh, I'm furious with her." Brooke wiped away the tears. "I'm going to kill her, but I'm also grateful, because if she hadn't done that, I would have spent that Christmas alone, unhappy, still stuck in the past. And now," she looked around the cabin, at the ring on her finger, at the man she loved more than she thought possible. "Now I have you. I have us. I have a life I never could have planned because it's so much better than anything I could have imagined." Logan pulled her back into his arms. "So you forgive me for not telling you sooner?" I forgive you. But Madison, she's going to have to hear an epic lecture. Fair enough. He kissed the top of her head. For the record, I called her yesterday to thank her, because without her, I never would have met you. Never would have found the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. You called her? Yes, and you know what she said? What? She said, I knew it. The moment I saw his profile, I knew he'd be perfect for you. You two were so stubbornly independent, so determined not to need anyone. You needed someone who understood that, and I was right. Brooke shook her head, amazed. She was right. Damn it, she was completely right. They were quiet for a moment. The fire crackling, the snow falling outside, a year of memories floating between them. You know what's funny? Brooke finally said. A year ago, I came here with a list of exactly how I wanted my perfect Christmas to be, and nothing, literally nothing on that list happened as I planned. And it was perfect anyway. It was perfect because it wasn't planned, because you showed up and messed everything up, because for the first time in my life, I let chaos in. And I discovered that chaos. She looked at him, smiling through happy tears. Chaos brought you. Logan wiped away her tears, his own eyes shining with emotion. You know what I learned this year? What? That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes your imperfections seem perfectly right. And Brooke, you make everything in my life make sense. Even the hard parts. Even the scary parts, because I'm going through them with you. When did you get so good with words? I've had a year to practice. He smiled. I had to keep up with a journalist. They kissed, soft and deep, and it was like the first kiss and every kiss since then, all combined into one. It was promise and memory, past and future, all condensed into that perfect moment. You know, Logan said when they pulled apart, Madison may have brought us together, but we did the rest. We chose to stay. We chose to fight through the distance. We chose to build something real. Yes, Brooke agreed. Yes, we did. And that night, as they lay in the bed where they'd made love for the first time, holding each other in the dark, Brooke felt a circle complete. They'd come back to where it all began, but they weren't the same people. They were stronger, more certain, more ready for whatever came next. Happy almost Christmas, Logan whispered. Happy almost Christmas, she replied. And outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a white, pristine blanket. But inside Cabin 7, there was only warmth, love, and the absolute certainty that sometimes the best moments in life are the ones we could never have planned. Sometimes all we need to do is let the storm in and trust that it will take us exactly where we need to be. Christmas morning dawned with a magical silence. Brooke woke before Logan, as always, and carefully slipped out of bed without waking him. She put on the robe she'd brought, the same one from a year ago, and went to the window. The world outside was a fairy tale. The snow had fallen all night, transforming everything into a white, untouched paradise. The pine branches bowed gracefully under the weight, glistening in the golden light of the rising sun. There were no footprints, no signs of movement, just peace. Brooke pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. 1 year. An entire year since her life had completely changed, since she'd stopped trying to control everything and simply let it happen. What are you thinking about? Logan's sleepy voice came from behind her. She turned, finding him leaning against the doorframe, wearing only sweatpants, his hair all messy, that lazy smile that still made her knees weak. I was thinking, she said softly, about how wrong I was. Wrong about what? About everything. Brooke walked over to him, taking his hands. A year ago, I came here believing that the perfect Christmas was something you could plan, that if you did everything right, the right decorations, the right food, the right activities, you'd have the perfect experience. But I was so wrong. Logan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist, And now, what do you believe now? Now I believe that the perfect Christmas, actually the perfect life, isn't about control. It's about being open. It's about letting the magic happen even when it looks nothing like what you imagined. She looked at him, her eyes shining with happy tears. It's about finding someone who makes you want to stop planning and start living. You really did become a romantic, huh? Logan teased, but his voice was choked. You turned me into this. She smiled. You and your ridiculous courage and your perfect hot chocolate and the way you look at me like I'm the only person in the world. That's because you are. To me, you are. They kissed, soft and slowly, unhurried, savoring the moment. And when they pulled apart, Logan took her hand and guided her to the couch. I have something for you, he said, grabbing a small wrapped box from under the Christmas tree. Logan, we agreed not to exchange gifts this year. I know, but this isn't exactly a gift. It's more a symbol. He handed the box to her. Open it. With trembling fingers, Brooke unwrapped the paper and opened the box. Inside was a notebook, small, bound in brown leather, with her initials engraved in gold on the cover. She looked at Logan, confused. Open it, he repeated. She opened the notebook and her heart stopped. The first pages were filled with Logan's handwriting, but it wasn't just words, it was lists. Handmade lists, in his masculine, slightly messy writing, things I love about Brooke Carter, the way she scrunches her nose when she's concentrating, how she always organizes the fridge by color, the sound of her laugh when she's truly happy, the way she still looks at me like I'm something special, her courage to love again after being hurt. The list continued. 10, 20, 30 items. Page after page of small details, observations, moments he'd noticed and documented throughout the year. Logan. Brooke could barely speak through the tears. You always made lists, he explained softly. To-do lists, grocery lists, lists of how to plan the perfect Christmas. So I thought, why not make my own list? A list of all the reasons why I love you, of all the little things that make you, you. There are blank pages back here, she noticed, flipping through, because I'm not finished. He took her face in his hands. I'm going to spend the rest of my life filling these pages, Brooke. I'm going to spend every day noticing something new, something wonderful, something that makes me love you even more. Because you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be celebrated, and I want to be the man who does that for you, every day, for the rest of our lives. Brooke couldn't hold back anymore. She let the tears fall freely as she threw herself into his arms, holding him so tight it almost hurt. How are you so perfect? I'm not. He laughed against her hair. I leave wet towels on the floor. I forget to take out the trash. I get cranky when I'm hungry. But Brooke, with you I want to be better. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, two hearts beating in sync, two souls that had found their home. I also have something for you, Brooke finally said, wiping away the tears. It's not as elaborate as yours, but... She went to her suitcase and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a list written in her perfectly organized handwriting. Logan took it and read aloud, My plan for the future with Logan Hayes. Stop making plans. Let chaos in love, with all my heart, even when it's scary. Say yes to adventure. Build a life I never could have planned. Be grateful every day for the reservation era that changed everything. Spend every Christmas forever with you. When he finished reading, he was smiling so widely, his eyes almost disappeared. You made a list about not making lists? Leave it alone. She rolled her eyes, but she was laughing. I'm a work in progress. You're perfect. He pulled her onto his lap. And you know what else? We're going to fulfill every item on this list, especially number 7. They spent the rest of Christmas morning exactly as they should, without plans, without schedules, without expectations. They made an elaborate breakfast together, throwing flour at each other and laughing like children. They opened small gifts they'd bought, despite agreeing not to. They walked in the snow, built a ridiculously crooked snowman, had a snowball fight that ended with both of them soaked and freezing. And later, when the afternoon arrived and they were curled up in front of the fireplace again, Brooke had a realization. "You know," she said, her head resting on Logan's chest, "I used to think happiness was something you achieved. Like a destination. You did everything right, followed all the steps, and eventually you'd get there. But now I realize, it's not a destination, it's a choice. Every day you choose to be happy, you choose to be grateful, you choose to love." "And do you choose that?" Logan asked. "Do you choose to be happy with me?" "Every day," she replied without hesitation. "Even on the hard days, even when we argue about who forgot to buy milk or who left the lights on. Because, Logan, you're my person, and I choose you. I'll always choose you." "Good," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Because I chose you the moment I saw you slip in that lobby with that ridiculous pink suitcase, and I'll keep choosing you every day until the day I die." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and gold. The snow reflected the colors, transforming the entire world into a work of art. And inside Cabin 7, two people who had started as strangers and become everything to each other simply existed together. "Merry Christmas, Logan," Brooke whispered. "Merry Christmas, love of my life." And in that moment, Brooke finally understood the truth that had escaped her for so long. The perfect Christmas didn't come from impeccable decorations or gourmet food or expensive gifts. It didn't come from meticulously executed plans or rigidly followed schedules. The perfect Christmas, the perfect life, came from love. Real, messy, imperfect, absolutely real love. It came from finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and loved you not despite your flaws, but including them. It came from letting the walls fall, from risking your heart, from trusting that sometimes the best gifts are the ones we never asked for. She'd come to Vermont a year ago seeking solitude, seeking control, seeking a perfect Christmas that existed only in her imagination. And she found something so much better. She found Logan. She found love. She found herself. And as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in white silence, Brooke Carter closed her eyes and made a silent promise. Never again would she try to control everything. Never again would she be afraid of chaos. Because chaos had given her the greatest gift of all. It had given her a home, not a place, but a person. And that, she finally understood, was what she'd always been searching for. The perfect Christmas wasn't planned. It just happened when you least expected it. In the most unexpected way. And thanks to a reservation error, a snowstorm, and a meddling best friend, Brooke had found hers. Forever. Christmas morning dawned with a magical silence. Brooke woke before Logan, as always, and carefully slipped out of bed without waking him. She put on the robe she'd brought, the same one from a year ago, and went to the window. The world outside was a fairy tale. The snow had fallen all night, transforming everything into a white, untouched paradise. The pine branches bowed gracefully under the weight, glistening in the golden light of the rising sun. There were no footprints, no signs of movement, just peace. Brooke pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. 1 year, an entire year since her life had completely changed, since she'd stopped trying to control everything and simply let it happen. "What are you thinking about?" Logan's sleepy voice came from behind her. She turned, finding him leaning against the doorframe, wearing only sweatpants, his hair all messy, that lazy smile that still made her knees weak. "I was thinking," she said softly, "about how wrong I was." "Wrong about what?" "About everything." Brooke walked over to him, taking his hands. A year ago, I came here believing that the perfect Christmas was something you could plan. That if you did everything right, the right decorations, the right food, the right activities, you'd have the perfect experience. But I was so wrong. Logan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. And now, what do you believe now? Now, I believe that the perfect Christmas, actually the perfect life, isn't about control. It's about being open. It's about letting the magic happen, even when it looks nothing like what you imagined. She looked at him, her eyes shining with happy tears. It's about finding someone who makes you want to stop planning and start living. You really did become a romantic, huh? Logan teased, but his voice was choked. You turned me into this. She smiled. You and your ridiculous courage and your perfect hot chocolate and the way you look at me like I'm the only person in the world. That's because you are. To me, you are. They kissed, soft and slowly, unhurried, savoring the moment. And when they pulled apart, Logan took her hand and guided her to the couch. I have something for you, he said, grabbing a small wrapped box from under the Christmas tree. Logan, we agreed not to exchange gifts this year. I know, but this isn't exactly a gift. It's more a symbol. He handed the box to her. Open it. With trembling fingers, Brooke unwrapped the paper and opened the box. Inside was a notebook, small, bound in brown leather, with her initials engraved in gold on the cover. She looked at Logan, confused. Open it, he repeated. She opened the notebook and her heart stopped. The first pages were filled with Logan's handwriting, but it wasn't just words, it was lists. Handmade lists, in his masculine, slightly messy writing, things I love about Brooke Carter, the way she scrunches her nose when she's concentrating, how she always organizes the fridge by color, the sound of her laugh when she's truly happy, the way she still looks at me like I'm something special, her courage to love again after being hurt. The list continued. 10, 20, 30 items. Page after page of small details, observations, moments he'd noticed and documented throughout the year. Logan. Brooke could barely speak through the tears. You always made lists, he explained softly. To-do lists, grocery lists, lists of how to plan the perfect Christmas. So I thought, why not make my own list? A list of all the reasons why I love you, of all the little things that make you, you. There are blank pages back here, she noticed, flipping through. Because I'm not finished. He took her face in his hands. I'm going to spend the rest of my life filling these pages, Brooke. I'm going to spend every day noticing something new, something wonderful, something that makes me love you even more. Because you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be celebrated, and I want to be the man who does that for you, every day, for the rest of our lives. Brooke couldn't hold back anymore. She let the tears fall freely as she threw herself into his arms, holding him so tight it almost hurt. How are you so perfect? I'm not. He laughed against her hair. I leave wet towels on the floor. I forget to take out the trash. I get cranky when I'm hungry. But Brooke, with you I want to be better. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, two hearts beating in sync, two souls that had found their home. I also have something for you, Brooke finally said, wiping away the tears. It's not as elaborate as yours, but... She went to her suitcase and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a list written in her perfectly organized handwriting. Logan took it and read aloud, My plan for the future with Logan Hayes. Stop making plans. Let chaos in love with all my heart, even when it's scary. Say yes to adventure. Build a life I never could have planned. Be grateful every day for the reservation. Era that changed everything. Spend every Christmas forever with you. When he finished reading, he was smiling so widely, his eyes almost disappeared. You made a list about not making lists? Leave it alone. She rolled her eyes, but she was laughing. I'm a work in progress. You're perfect. He pulled her onto his lap. And you know what else? We're going to fulfill every item on this list, especially number 7. They spent the rest of Christmas morning exactly as they should, without plans, without schedules, without expectations. They made an elaborate breakfast together, throwing flour at each other and laughing like children. They opened small gifts they'd bought, despite agreeing not to. They walked in the snow, built a ridiculously crooked snowman, had a snowball fight that ended with both of them soaked and freezing. And later, when the afternoon arrived and they were curled up in front of the fireplace again, Brooke had a realization. "You know," she said, her head resting on Logan's chest, "I used to think happiness was something you achieved, like a destination. You did everything right, followed all the steps, and eventually you'd get there. But now I realize it's not a destination, it's a choice. Every day you choose to be happy, you choose to be grateful, you choose to love." "And do you choose that?" Logan asked. "Do you choose to be happy with me?" "Every day," she replied without hesitation. "Even on the hard days, even when we argue about who forgot to buy milk or who left the lights on. Because, Logan, you're my person, and I choose you. I'll always choose you." "Good," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Because I chose you the moment I saw you slip in that lobby with that ridiculous pink suitcase, and I'll keep choosing you every day until the day I die." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and gold. The snow reflected the colors, transforming the entire world into a work of art. And inside Cabin 7, 2 people who had started as strangers and become everything to each other simply existed together. "Merry Christmas, Logan," Brooke whispered. "Merry Christmas, love of my life." And in that moment, Brooke finally understood the truth that had escaped her for so long. The perfect Christmas didn't come from impeccable decorations or gourmet food or expensive gifts. It didn't come from meticulously executed plans or rigidly followed schedules. The perfect Christmas, the perfect life, came from love. Real, messy, imperfect, absolutely real love. It came from finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and loved you not despite your flaws, but including them. It came from letting the walls fall, from risking your heart, from trusting that sometimes the best gifts are the ones we never asked for. She'd come to Vermont a year ago seeking solitude, seeking control, seeking a perfect Christmas that existed only in her imagination. And she found something so much better. She found Logan. She found love. She found herself. And as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in white silence, Brooke Carter closed her eyes and made a silent promise. Never again would she try to control everything. Never again would she be afraid of chaos, because chaos had given her the greatest gift of all. It had given her a home, not a place, but a person. And that, she finally understood, was what she'd always been searching for. The perfect Christmas wasn't planned. It just happened when you least expected it, in the most unexpected way. And thanks to a reservation error, a snowstorm, and a meddling best friend, Brooke had found hers forever. Brooke Carter arrived at that Vermont resort searching for control, for a perfect Christmas she could plan down to the last detail, a Christmas where nothing could hurt her, where no one could disappoint her. She came with her color-coded lists, her rigid schedules, her carefully constructed walls. But life, it turns out, has its own plans. And sometimes the best things happen when we stop trying to control everything and simply let go. Sometimes a reservation error becomes a blessing. A stranger becomes a soulmate. A snowstorm becomes the beginning of forever. And 3 days become more meaningful than 3 years ever were. Because the perfect Christmas, the perfect life, doesn't come from planning. It comes from being brave enough to let love in, even when it's scary, even when it doesn't make sense, even when every logical part of your brain is screaming that it's too fast, too soon, too much. It comes from finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves you anyway. Maybe that's the real magic of Christmas. Not the decorations or the gifts or the traditions, but the reminder that the best things in life can't be controlled. They can only be welcomed, embraced, cherished. And sometimes all you need to do is slip on an icy floor, meet a stranger with a disarming smile, and let the chaos change everything. Because in the end, isn't that what love is? Beautiful, messy, unpredictable chaos that somehow makes perfect sense. If this story touched you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what allows us to keep bringing stories like this.